So please remain standing for the national anthem. Please be seated. So good afternoon and welcome to the 41st commencement ceremony of UNH School of Law. On behalf of the University of New Hampshire and the University of New Hampshire School of Law, I want to begin obviously by congratulating the class of 2016 on the tremendous professional achievement that today represents. Your accomplishments will be the focus of our celebration today, but before we turn to those, I want to begin at the outset and just take a moment to thank you, actually, for what you've given back to us in the process. You've done so much while you've been with us to enrich the life of the law school, to enrich the life of the broader Concord community, and it's really been a privilege to have you with us. Your class is filled with so many decent and compassionate people who will do important and inspired things with your lives. And it's truly been a privilege to have you as part of our community. So thank you for sharing your talent, your generosity, and your kindness. We're privileged today to be joined by some of the most steadfast supporters of the University of New Hampshire and the law school, and I'd like to acknowledge some of those folks before we get the rest of the proceedings underway. I'd like to begin by acknowledging many of the trustees of the University System of New Hampshire who are with us today, and thank them for their service to the university and to our state. Beginning with the chair of the system board, Pamela Diamandis. Thank you, Pam, for joining us. The vice chair of the system board, Tim Riley. The secretary of the system board, Trustee Jude Blake. Trustee Amy Begg, and Trustee Kenneth Moulton. And then over here we have the student trustee, Lincoln Crutchfield. So thanks to all of you for joining us today. I also want to acknowledge the president of the University of New Hampshire, Mark Huddleston, whose commitment to excellence in higher education continues to animate our university and is the reason why our law school is part of it. But for President Huddleston's leadership, a great university and a great law school would never have come together, and a tremendous opportunity for our state and for our students would have been missed. So thank you, Mark, for your leadership. Also on the dais with us are this year's honorary degree recipients, the Chief Judge of the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, Sharon Prost, and the Undersecretary of Commerce for Intellectual Property and the Director of the United States Patent and Trademark Office, Michelle Lee. We're honored to have these extraordinary public servants with us today, and we will be celebrating their contributions to the profession a little later this afternoon. Finally, on the dais to my left, I'd like to acknowledge our Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, Professor Margaret McCabe. She's among the most capable, thoughtful, and resilient colleagues I've ever had the good fortune to work with, and it is our immeasurable good fortune that she is working in the service of our school. Thank you, Professor McCabe. I'd also like to acknowledge the people who've worked most closely with all of you during your time here at the law school, who have been your partners in learning, in your professional growth, and in achieving your aspirations, the faculty and staff of UNH School of Law. So thank you for joining us as well. I know each and every one of them joins me today in celebrating your achievements. And in particular, I would like to note and express special thanks and acknowledgement to the team of staff and faculty led by Assistant Dean Fran Canning. Hi, Dean Canning, who are responsible for this tremendous celebration today. They worked really hard to bring us this beautiful weather, as well as the beautiful accommodations, and so thanks to all of them. And actually, I would like any members of the staff or faculty with us who helped pull this together to stand so we could acknowledge you. Please, come on. They're very shy, apparently. Finally, and truly in the category of last but not least, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the friends and family members of all of you who are here today. It's their love, it's their support, it's, I'm sure, their patience that has brought you here today to this happy place. And I want to thank all of them for joining us as well and for providing such terrific support and guidance to all of your loved ones while they've been with us here at UNH School of Law. So thank you for joining us. Among those friends and family are some particularly special folks who are here to witness their children join them as UNH Law graduates. It may seem hard to believe, but we are now entering into our second generation of UNH Law alumni, and there are a couple of families that I would like to acknowledge in that respect. First, John Burlock, JD class of 2016, is joined today by his father, Stephen Burlock, a graduate of the law school's very first class, 1976. You stand? All right. And Hillary Cessna, JD class of 2016, is joined by her mother, our very own Eleanor McClellan, JD class of 1981. And also by her stepmother, Jill Barton Holmes, JD class of 1986. So thank you as well. I'd now like to welcome the president of the University of New Hampshire, Mark Huddleston, to the podium. Mark.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. As Jordan said, it is my privilege to serve as the president of the University of New Hampshire, and one of the perks of being president is to be able to come to this ceremony every year. We zipped over here from the commencement in Durham this morning, where there were thousands and thousands of graduates and more thousands of family and friends there. It was a lively celebration. This is, I'm sure, going to be equally joyous, but probably a little more sedate. I don't expect anybody to be shaking cans of beer, popping them, dousing their aisle mates. So it's nice to be here. And let me be amongst the first to congratulate all of you. It's a great achievement. Congratulations to the class of 2016. You know, you really do have a lot to celebrate. You are getting a degree from one of the best law schools in America. In fact, if you can believe the U.S. News and World Report rankings, we are a materially better law school today than we were when you entered. So you probably should be glad you applied when you did. You might not get in for the class of 2019 or 2020. And particularly if you earned your degree in intellectual property. We know this is one of the world's best programs, and we're all very, very proud of that. And the degrees that you'll receive today represent, I know, a tremendous amount of hard work, intellect, tremendous talent, and a word that I used this morning when I talked to the undergraduates, a lot of grit, too. I know that a lot of you worked hard to balance family and work and studies, and it really is a tremendous accomplishment that you are celebrating today. I know you're also celebrating the fact that you're probably outside the law library for the first time in weeks. You're probably celebrating the fact that you're eating food that doesn't come from a vending machine for the first time in weeks, and that's all worth celebrating. Of course, you do have to take a bar exam, I think, many of you, right? Some of you are going to not have to do that. Many of you will, but you'll get through that too, I know. Jordan already started to do this, but let me say, too, that while we celebrate with you today, we also thank the many other people who helped get you here on this journey today, particularly your families and your loved ones. I think they deserve a round of applause. And of course, the family really includes members of the UNH faculty and staff who mentored you and taught you and encouraged you and inspired you. You wouldn't have gotten where you are today without them too. So let's give them all a round of applause as well. So I'm going to keep it short because we've got far more important people to hear from, but let me just say once again how proud we are to have you part of the UNH family. Jordan said that he witnessed the coming together of two great institutions, and that's true. I think that we made the law school stronger, but you made the University of New Hampshire stronger. So it's wonderful to look out at this crowd today and celebrate that marriage. So I now invite Dean Budd to come back up and tell you about a very special tradition called Advice from the Faculty. Jordan? Thank you, Mark.
So as President Huddleston said, we turn now to advice from the faculty, which is a tradition that began with the very first graduating class at the law school in 1976. John Burlock's dad remembers that, I'm sure. Good. Every year since then at graduation, the graduating class has selected a faculty member to address them at commencement. And this year's class has gone for double the pleasure, double the fun. They're going to have two folks address them, and they're both terrific people. The first to address the graduating class is Martha Massey, the wife of the late Calvin Massey, our Daniel Webster Distinguished Professor of Law. As all of you know, Calvin passed away last year after a courageous battle with cancer. Calvin was a towering figure in American law, and that's literally and figuratively because he was really tall. He was an extraordinary figure, though. He came to UNH Law after spending most of his life teaching in California, but he embraced New England. He loved New England. He loved UNH School of Law, and most particularly, he loved all of you. And he never missed an occasion to talk with colleagues about that. He was tremendously productive and an important scholar. He was a committed and much-loved teacher, and he was a colleague who unfailingly put the interest of his students and of the school before his own. By his very gentle example, very gentle, he made all of us better at what we do, and for that, we will always be grateful. We are privileged today to be joined by Calvin's wife, Martha, who has been asked by the graduating class to share with us some thoughts about Calvin and his relationship with all of you. So it is my honor to invite our friend, Martha Massey, to the podium. Martha.
I want to thank all of you for asking me to speak. It's an honor to be with you today on this important day, and I only wish it could be Calvin standing up here addressing you. We all know how much you wanted to be here, witnessing the completion of your studies and the beginning of your professions. A little over a year ago, in January and February of 2015, Calvin would often come home and be so excited and just absolutely energized by his classes. He found all of you to be engaged, hardworking, curious, eager to learn, and felt that there was a chemistry in the classroom that made for one of his best teaching experiences ever. It really was a blow to him that he couldn't finish the semester with you. He would be so proud of you today. I can't tell you how much your thoughtfulness and that of the entire UNH community meant to Calvin and to me during his illness, especially in the last few months. I want to thank you and Jordan Budd and the whole UNH community for all the support you gave to Calvin and me. It made a very hard time a little bit less hard for both of us. It's been a privilege to get to know all of you personally and through Calvin. So, congratulations to the Daniel Webster Scholars being sworn into the New Hampshire Bar, and to all of you completing a rigorous course of study with enthusiasm and aplomb. I'm sure Calvin would exhort you to carry into the rest of your life the qualities he saw in his classroom, and most importantly, to cherish this special time we're all given on this earth. Thank you.
The graduating class also asked to be addressed by Professor Emeritus Mitch Simon. Professor Simon, as you probably know, came to the law school a really, really long time ago, 25 years ago or more. Though he's now retired from the full-time faculty, he continues to teach and is an honored and beloved member of the UNH Law community. The fact that our graduates have selected him to address them today, despite his semi-retired status, reflects Mitch's unparalleled dedication to his students and to this school. He is, as you all know, an exceptional teacher. He is wise, he's fair, he's demanding, he's fiercely committed to his students' best interests, and he earns their respect because he holds himself to an equally high standard. Outside the classroom, Professor Simon has mentored countless students over the years. inspiring them to practice law with honesty, with integrity, and with humility, values that he embodies most powerfully himself. He's among the most decent and principled people I know, and I am honored to call him a colleague and a friend. Professor Simon, would you join us?
President Huddleston, Dean Budd, honored guests, friends and family, and most importantly, class of 2016. It's really a great honor to be here and to be selected by the class to speak to you. And I have to say, it makes it all the more special doing this with Martha Massey. Even for one who speaks in front of groups all the time, whether it be in a courtroom or in a classroom, it's amazing how daunting and nerve-wracking preparing a graduation speech is. I think it's because graduation speeches are much more personal than what we do day to day. We're not hiding behind cases or the words of others, but you're really out there and you have to sort of have your own thoughts. And so lacking a really developed idea when you asked me, I did, I think, what any good lawyer or legal scholar would do. I Googled tips for good graduation speeches. And you will be surprised at how many articles there are on this. Including ones that had lines that would work and speeches you can steal. I chose being at an IP school not to do either of those. But what I did find is that in these articles, there were 3 characteristics that seemed to be agreed upon by virtually all the authors. And the first is they said to use humor. Now, I thought that was a good idea, and I would have done that, except the class will remember this. I taught this group in 2013 in torts. That's how I got to know most of them. For those of you who are not lawyers, torts is the study of personal injury law. That means that my students would come into class for 14 weeks having read somewhere between 10 and 15 stories of incredible tragedy, of exploding furnaces and Aquanet cans that exploded, drugs that didn't work. And it gets a little bit tough after about week 5. And so I've always thought I should leaven my class with jokes. And over the years, I've actually accumulated ones that worked in years past. Well, for whatever reason, in 2013, I used some of my best jokes. And I would look out, and what I saw was these same faces without robes looking at me. And it was one of those moments where I thought, I'm not going to go through that again, so I'm going to skip the humor. So the second tip was you have to have a meaningful message. Now, of course, that's the hard part about graduation speeches. And the interesting thing is, as I was thinking about that, I was reading a little more in these articles, and they said, while you're thinking about your meaningful message, remember that all empirical studies suggest that nobody remembers anything you said. And there actually was a study where they asked people during the speech, they had people sit next to them, what was that about? And people didn't know. So I really thought that developing a really good message might not be a great use of either of our time. So the final tip was to be brief. And I thought, I can do that, really. I mean, all I got to do is get up here, say a few things, and get off the stage. The problem is that in addition to torts, I teach legal ethics. And you lose your legal ethicist card if you don't try to say something meaningful when you have an opportunity. So I had to think about how do you combine brevity, which I embraced, and meaningful message, which I think I have to do. And I thought long and hard about it, and I thought, who has mastered that? What particular group of American society has done that? And all of a sudden it came to me, the people who have done that are advertising people who can get us to remember anything in 15 to 30 seconds. And so the inspiration for this speech is the 1992 iconic Gatorade commercial featuring Michael Jordan, which of course made most memorable the line, "Be like Mike." So once I thought about that, I realized now all I have to do is use that message in the speech. And of course, the easy thing is, my advice to you is going to be very simple. And my advice to you is going to be like Calvin. If I were true to my principles, I'd probably sit here and think, they'll remember that. But in some ways, I'm going to take a few more minutes to at least talk about why I think that's an important message for you. Calvin and I were, in many ways, polar opposites. As Jordan described, he was a bear of a man. Came in with a huge bow tie, amazing enthusiasm, and a booming voice, and he filled a room, and it was just an amazing experience to be in a room with him. As all of you know, I am not. And that's a superficial level. The real fundamental difference is Calvin and I really stood on opposite sides of the political spectrum. We really had very divergent views. But despite this, I was lucky enough to have an office nearby Calvin, and so I had a chance when we came in together to sit and chat with him. And our beginning chats started innocently enough, as people becoming friends do. We shared some things. We shared a very strong interest in the East Coast versus the West Coast baseball issues. We also had a profound and deep love of our families and pride in our kids that allowed us to spend hours talking about that. And as old men, we had a great interest in talking about each other's medical treatments. So having spent all this time chatting and becoming friendly, invariably we were going to move to the treacherous area of politics. And like all friends, we did. And what I found after moving to that area was that I experienced two things after a conversation with Calvin. I felt better informed, and I felt more hopeful. And what I mean by that is I felt better informed because whenever you talk to Calvin, it was an interesting conversation, and he understood something. He understood that standing by immutable values, yelling about something that was absolutely right in his opinion, didn't get anybody anywhere. And he also understood that what we also often see as masquerading as values arguments are really different ways in which we see the facts, the underlying facts, the way we make inferences. I remember one time Calvin and I had a series of discussions about welfare reform, an issue I had litigated a number of years ago and an issue that he had strong feelings about. And the thing that was so interesting about that was Calvin immediately understood that how you feel about changes in public entitlement program really related much more to how you saw the people who were benefiting. If you had the image, if you started with the personal image that these were people who were lazy and were trying to cheat the system, and that by doing this, we were in fact de-incentivizing them to move forward, you reach one conclusion. If you have the position that these are people who had a very rough draw, and this is society trying to at least keep the status quo and offer a helping hand, you reach something different. But Calvin and I got a chance not to yell at each other for our differences, but we got a chance to talk. And Calvin, as he always did, had empirical evidence. He had support for his positions. He had thought these things through. Fortunately for me, having litigated a case and having had an expert witness to teach me much of this, I also had some empirical support. And we talked and we talked. But what was most interesting is Calvin listened just enraptured. He just sat there and looked at me when I talked to him about my 13 years doing legal assistance work, representing thousands of people who were dependent upon some kind of assistance. And I know by the end of our conversation that I had learned so much, that he had helped me understand why people come to a different viewpoint. And I know that I know that I'd helped him reach that same point. And so I left those discussions, as I always did with Calvin, feeling just a little smarter. And more importantly, with Calvin, I also felt more hopeful. Calvin taught me that if you have people of good faith who are really trying to understand an issue, are willing to change their position when the facts don't meet their preconceived notions, and who are really trying to be open to compromise, that maybe we as a society can reach some good public policy. It's possible to develop good public policy by thinking about those things. It's possible to avoid gridlock by understanding the things that Calvin understood. So I can say with certainty that you, if you follow Calvin's lead, will be a better lawyer. If you understand the facts on the other side of the case, if you understand the positions that people who might be making those decisions, be they judge or jurors, are likely to hold and why they hold those, you can better persuade them, you can better educate, you can better represent your client. And more importantly, I can say, if you live those values, you will be a better human being, and I believe will be a better society. So class of 2016, my hope for you is simply be like Calvin. What I want to say is thank you. When you come back and visit us, which we really hope you do because you really have a special place in our heart, stop by, and I'd love to talk to you, and I'll have to hear if you at least remember to be like Calvin. Thank you very much.
So we turn now to the addresses from our graduate and JD student speakers. First, we'll hear from our graduate student speaker, Jerome Munichen, a candidate for the LLM in intellectual property. Jerome came to UNH Law from Belgium. He received his LLB from St. Louis University in Brussels and a master's degree in corporate and IP law from the Free University, also in Brussels. That would have to be in Brussels because we don't have free universities in the United States. Jerome was an important member of the class of 2016, and he was instrumental in bringing the Brand Valuation Conference to the school in April, which was a great event. So I would invite Jerome to the podium now to share his thoughts with us as the graduate student speaker elected by his colleagues. Jerome.
I didn't Google any tip about doing a speech, but I hope I'll keep up. Family members, professors, faculty, and our guests, good afternoon. Class of 2016, congratulations. When I first arrived here in New Hampshire last August, I had never set a foot in the state, and to be honest, I didn't know much about it except that I couldn't forget my winter gear. However, it did not take long to learn about the Granite State, its famous lobster, maple syrup, the foliage season, and all of the specialties that I got to experience with my fellow international students, and I've been truly enjoyable. Last summer, a handful of us arrived in Concord from all around the globe to study IP. Each student brought with them their history, experience, their culture, but we all came with the same objective. This very specific day, the diploma we will obtain today. Among these students, my classmate, Yazoo, was supposed to only stay for one semester, but she liked it so much that she's still here with us today. Others, like Jingjing, felt so comfortable in Concord that she had her husband join her and even enroll in the law school. None of us knew each other, but by now, we have created strong ties that will remain for the long time to come. One thing that's for sure, today, we're leaving UNH Law with way more than just a diploma. This year has been a life and career changer for most of us, and this could not have happened without support. First, it is not cheap to attend law school. Some of us spent their life savings to achieve their dreams. Others had support from their family in order to be here today. As for myself, and although my mom does not speak a word of English and has no clue of what I'm saying right now, I would like to thank my parents. Now, once you have gathered the funds to attend law school, the most difficult part is still to be done, attending law school. When English is not your first language, studying cases about abbreviated new drugs application litigation, marks geographically deceptively misdescriptive, and others copyright fair uses is challenging. Such an accomplishment would not have been possible without the help of our professors, our fellow international students, but also the JD students who were always willing to help us and share about our respective culture. IP is definitely not the most popular field of law. When I chose to specialize in that field back in Belgium, I cannot recall the countless times I've heard, "Why do you want to work in IP? It's so complicated and boring." So imagine how it felt for us when we all arrived in what is commonly referred to as an IP school. From its outside sign to its IP clinic and wide curriculum, this school lives and breathes IP, and I'm certainly proud to have learned from great professors in the field. IP law isn't just about collecting a tremendous amount of money for something you created. It's obtaining recognition for something that you worked hard for, just like this diploma for the hours spent to study the law. Finally, I could not end this speech without saying a word about one particular person, Christine Rousseau. I don't know where she is. Our international advisor. How many times, and I'm a big part of it, did we walk in your office telling you about our issues in the hope that you would help us find a solution? No matter what the problem was, you would always help us out and never lose your smile. On the behalf of the international class, I would like to thank you, Christine, to make Concord feel like China, Taiwan, India, Ukraine, France, or Belgium. I thank you all.
Next, we'll hear from our JD student speaker, Jay McClure. In his time at UNH Law, Jay served as notes editor of the Law Review. He worked as a legal resident in the chambers of Chief Judge Jeffrey Howard of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit, and earlier this week received the law school's prestigious Scholarship and Leadership Award given each year to the law student in the graduating JD class who, not surprisingly, best represents a combination of scholarship and leadership. So his colleagues in the JD program have voted Jay to be their class speaker, and I invite Jay to the podium now to address us. Thanks, Jay. Wow.
Thank you to my classmates for the chance to speak today and for a fantastic 3 years together. Looking back, one of the most prominent memories for me was our first week of school in contracts class, where I was the first student called to discuss a case. We all took contracts together, nearly 80 students packed into room 200. And I sat on the front row that day, but far to the side edge. And for me, this was a calculated decision. It was the front row, which showed some initiative, and that's where my law school prep book told me to sit. But I was so far to the side, there was no way I would look like I was volunteering, and I really shouldn't be called. Well, Professor Hearn walked in that day carrying a stack of cards. And as we quickly would learn, the cards had our names on them. Out of all the students, the top card that day, the lucky winner, was mine. People were still sitting down, taking out books, getting papers, as Professor Hearn walked to the podium, looked down at the card, and said, "Mr. McClure." I raised my hand. I thought he maybe had something for me. I'd heard a little bit about law school classes and how they worked, but I didn't really know what to expect. I hadn't seen the movie The Paper Chase, and I figured Legally Blonde probably wasn't a reliable guide. Well, as it turned out, we were diving right into the assignments for that day, and he was calling on me. "Hawkins v. McGee," he said. "Who was the plaintiff and what did he want?" Two questions we would become very familiar with. I grabbed my book and flipped to the case. I didn't have any notes prepared. In orientation, we went to a session on how to brief a case, where you write the facts and the issue, the holding, the rationale, all the things you might want to know if you're called on at random. But it hadn't sunk in for me that we were expected to prepare every case to that level of detail. After all, the professors assigned numerous cases for every class, and that meant it would take hours to prepare just for a single class. Well, luckily, I survived that day, and I didn't need notes for Hawkins v. McGee or the case of the hairy hand, because as the nickname suggests, it's one of those strange cases that just sticks with you. Even without notes, I could recount the basic details and could still do so today. The plaintiff needed a hand operation. A doctor promised a 100% good hand or perfect hand. The plaintiff did not receive a perfect hand, but instead a hand that sprouted hair in an unnatural way. But that's beside the point. I remember that case and I remember that experience so well because it was the first of so many occasions in law school where I was put on the spot, where my name was called and all eyes were on me and I had to perform. Every student here has now been through that experience over and over again these past 6 semesters. It's conditioned us to analyze cases and arguments, to think on our feet, to advocate positions with or against our peers, all essential skills for lawyers. But I think most importantly, it's shown us that so much of good lawyering is about preparation. At the end of the day, it's about our hard work. I wasn't called at random again in contracts. The cards didn't make it back around. But I certainly was called in every other class. And I knew after that first experience what was expected. We can leave here confidently today because we know what it means to prepare, to spend hours reading cases, taking notes, discussing them with our classmates, exploring every possibility for that one brief moment where we might be called or where we might need a particular argument. We're the newest lawyers out there, or momentarily we will be, and we'll face some tough, really experienced competitors. But regardless of who's on the other side of the case, no matter how experienced or brilliant they are, whatever their credentials, we know that it comes down to our preparation. That with enough preparation, we can tackle any case and we can perform well. We have the skills now to prepare and to be ready, just as we have been time and again in class, to be ready at that crucial moment when our name is called.
Today we have the privilege of conferring honorary degrees upon two outstanding members of our profession, Chief Judge Sharon Prost of the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals and Michelle Lee, the Undersecretary of Commerce for Intellectual Property and the Director of the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Together they represent here with us on the dais today the leadership of our nation's intellectual property infrastructure. It's really kind of an extraordinary thing. Chief Judge Prost guides the nation's leading appellate tribunal for the resolution of intellectual property law disputes, and Ms. Lee leads the federal office charged with the national administration of our intellectual property laws. Together, they represent the leadership of intellectual property in our nation, but they also represent the highest expression of public service in the legal profession. Judge Prost served our nation, or has served our nation, in an extraordinary range of capacities. Prior to her appointment to the Federal Circuit, she served as Minority Chief Counsel, Deputy Chief Counsel, and Chief Counsel to the United States Senate Judiciary Committee. As Chief Minority Labor Counsel to the United States Senate Committee on Labor and Human Resources. As Assistant, Associate, and Acting Solicitor for the National Labor Relations Board. As an attorney at the Internal Revenue Service, as a field attorney at the Federal Labor Relations Authority, as a labor relations specialist at the U.S. General Accounting Office, and as a labor relations specialist at the U.S. Civil Service Commission. It is difficult to fathom a public service career of such breadth and impact. Ms. Lee's biography is similarly impressive. She currently serves as the principal advisor to the President of the United States on domestic and international intellectual property issues, while leading one of the largest and most influential intellectual property offices in the world, with 12,000 employees and a $3 billion budget. Prior to assuming her current position, Ms. Lee served as Deputy Director of the USPTO, and before that, she served as the first director of the USPTO's Silicon Valley Regional Office. Among her many other accomplishments and positions, it's, I think, interesting to note that she began her legal career with 2 judicial clerkships, one of which was with the Honorable Paul Michel of the United States Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, the very court that Chief Judge Prost now leads. As a school founded to promote intellectual property education as well as public service, we are especially proud today to celebrate the service and achievements of these 2 remarkable leaders of our profession. They are inspiring role models for all of us and a powerful example of how lawyers can make a profound and positive difference in the lives of many others. We will begin with the conferring of the honorary degree upon Michelle Lee. Ms. Lee, will you please step forward? Face forward. The commendation of this degree reads as follows. In recognition of her far-reaching contributions to the field of intellectual property law during her exceptional career in public service, including her leadership of the United States Patent and Trademark Office and her service as Undersecretary of Commerce for Intellectual Property, the University of New Hampshire School of Law, upon the recommendation of the Dean and faculty, hereby confers on Michelle K. Lee the honorary degree of Doctor of Laws and all the rights, privileges, and honors pertaining to this degree.
Thank you, Dean Budd, for those very generous remarks and for, of course, this most distinguished honor. I am so very grateful to President Huddleston, to the faculty, and the staff of the University of New Hampshire School of Law for bestowing upon me this wonderful honor, which I'm delighted to share with all of you today. But this is your day too, and I congratulate all of you on your many marvelous achievements for which you and your families should feel tremendously proud. It is both a privilege and honor to receive this honorary degree from a university that has been so committed to the study of intellectual property law and plays such a pivotal role in preparing the next generation of intellectual property law scholars, and alongside Chief Judge Prost, who has so ably served on the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit since 2011 and as Chief Judge since May of 2014. When I was a graduate student at MIT, I took an intellectual property course offered by Professor Robert Rines, who of course founded the Franklin Pierce School of Law, which eventually became University of New Hampshire's School of Law. He took the time to talk to me about his intellectual property practice and the opportunities in the field. He offered me advice. He invited me out to the then Franklin Pierce Law School, this was 25 years ago, and took me on a tour of his patent office, showing me file histories and so forth. Needless to say, this engagement had a profound impact on me, as I considered him to be one of the key influences in my life that led me to a career in law from engineering and eventually to intellectual property law. So it's a special privilege and pleasure for me to return here now, 25 years later, as the Undersecretary of Commerce for Intellectual Property and the Director of the United States Patent and Trademark Office. This law school also has a rich tradition of promoting public service, which is so important because life is about more than just going to work to earn a living. It's equally important to help others, to give back, and to lead efforts to make differences in our communities. 55 years ago, President John F. Kennedy challenged his fellow Americans to ask not what their country could do for them, but what they could do for their country. His call to public service still echoes today. Now, as then, we still need more Americans who are willing and able to get involved and to consider public service, even if for just a period of time. I was drawn to public service after 25 years in the private sector because I wanted to give back to a country that had given me and my family much. Still, I never imagined that I would be leading one day a 200-plus year federal agency with 13,000 employees and a $3 billion budget, which is tasked with incentivizing American innovation through intellectual property rights. But opportunities present themselves, sometimes when and where you least expect it. And I viewed public service as an opportunity to make a difference. That's the reason why I left the private sector to work for the United States Patent and Trademark Office, first as a director of the Silicon Valley Regional Office, then as deputy director of the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And now I have the tremendous privilege of being the first woman to lead the United States Patent and Trademark Office in its more than 225-year history, and the USPTO goes all the way back to the founding of our country. Taking on such a leadership role has given me an opportunity to help ensure that our country continues to remain at the forefront of innovation by having intellectual property policies, programs, and procedures that encourage invention. While it's my career in intellectual property that led me to public service, there will be opportunities for all of you to give back to your community and to your country, no matter what area of law you choose to practice in. In the years ahead, our communities will only need more able public servants who can apply the skills that you have honed over these past 3 years, thinking critically, analyzing difficult situations, and a willingness to tackle challenges with vigor. Public service offers opportunities not only to work on some of the most interesting and important issues of our time, but to have a positive impact on our country and the world, and in ways that you sometimes don't get in the private sector. So, thank you for honoring me with this honorary Doctor of Law degree, which I accept with humility and gratitude. To the class of 2016, to President Huddleston, to Dean Budd, to the Board of Trustees, my many thanks, my respect, and of course, to the class of 2016, my congratulations. Best wishes to you all.
We will next confer the honorary degree upon Chief Judge Sharon Prost of the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals. Judge Prost, will you please step forward? The commendation of this degree reads as follows. In recognition of her outstanding contributions to the work of the executive and legislative branches of our national government, her leadership of the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, and her exemplary service to the legal profession as a role model and mentor, the University of New Hampshire School of Law, upon the recommendation of the Dean and faculty, hereby confers on the Honorable Sharon Prost the honorary degree of Doctor of Laws and all the rights, privileges, and honors pertaining to this degree. Chief Judge Prost will now deliver our commencement address.
No one warned me that I would have to follow such a great and esteemed list of speakers, but here we go. Good afternoon, President Huddleston, Dean Budd, faculty, friends, Judge Gallarza, who's a professor here, my dear and longtime friend, and most of all to you, graduates, class of 2016. I could not be more honored or delighted to join you here today on this terrific occasion of your law school graduation. And of course, I am so proud, honored, and grateful to be receiving this honorary degree of my own. It's particularly moving for me because it's almost like coming home. I was born, you see, just down the way on the other side of the Massachusetts border in a very small city named Newburyport. Of course, now it's a beautiful seaside resort. When my family left in the 50s, it was kind of a dying shoe town, but very Yankee, as I assume it still is. Quite an adjustment for my non-English speaking Orthodox Jewish parents who ended up there shortly having lost their families and much else surviving concentration camps. And my parents, without even a high school degree, because their education was interrupted by the war, began in Newburyport in this country. My father was a bread baker, and my mother a store clerk. In fact, she finally achieved at the end of her career in Hartford, Connecticut, working for Travelers Insurance Company as a mail clerk. And she was thrilled because it was the first job she had ever had when she didn't have to wear a crummy uniform. Of course, I loved being able to tell her when I became a judge that we had come full circle. Now I would be wearing a uniform as well, a judicial robe. And when they landed here, though, this city, that city, Newburyport, and this great country offered the hope of a new life where their daughters could work really hard and reach for the stars. And with their support and their inspiration, I caught one of those stars. Today is a momentous day for all of you. It's undoubtedly the end of a long slog that began in preschool, right? The end of a period of long nights and stressful days. But there's a reason this is called a commencement, a beginning. You are joining a great profession. You will have the title attorney and all of the responsibilities that go with it for the rest of your careers and your lives. For me, this is a challenging day. As Professor Simon pointed out, imparting words of wisdom and inspiration is not an easy task. Indeed, in over-preparing, as any good lawyer would do, right, I researched dozens of commencement speeches to see how others had done it. The sheer volume of advice out there is overwhelming. Not that that is news to any of you. I have no doubt that each of you, in preparing to enter the legal field, have researched the so-called secrets to success up and down. Well, I can't speak to what secrets have worked for others, but I can speak to my own experiences and lessons I have learned along the way. But before I begin, I want to ask you to do something for me and for yourselves. Look, this is your day, graduates, no question about that. But my most treasured title among those you've heard is and always will be Mom. So it is apparent to me that many of you are joined here today by the moms, dads, family members, and devoted friends that you have. And some that may not be here physically, I'm sure you carry in your hearts. The people with whom you've shared the best and possibly the most difficult moments of your lives. And they are here once again for you, rooting and supporting. So please join me, not just in a round of applause, but please, graduates, stand up and give these people a standing ovation. Thank you. So back to you and me. I offer a few points as follows. Do what you love and what you have a passion for. You can never be truly great at something if you don't love what you do. When I came to my court 15 years ago, I described my most recent job as chief counsel of the Senate Judiciary Committee to one of my colleagues as the best legal job in the country. And he responded, "No, Sharon, your new job is." And it took me a while to adjust, but he was absolutely right. And I never let myself forget my good fortune of having a career loving what I was doing. I wish the same for all of you. Please, you should try not to settle for less. 2, also recognize and accept that in a 40-year career, what you love to do can change and evolve as you can. Embrace those changes, welcome them. Don't be afraid to take risks, and please stop stressing about what you are going to do for the rest of your life. Evaluate every opportunity that comes your way very critically, but never let "I'm too junior" or "I'm not experienced enough" be your reason for passing up a great opportunity. You know, the saying goes, 80% of life is showing up, and I like to say, and the other 20% is being at the right place at the right time. Well, that's all sort of true. My professional life is a bit of having been at the right place at the right time. That may be necessary, but it is not sufficient. You have to be at that place armed with the strongest possible credentials and experience possible. My story is an example. I got my degrees at night after college, 3 of them while I was working. And with an eye always on the next chance, my goal was to be a labor lawyer. But I always loved finance, and I always liked tax, which led me to an MBA in finance and an LLM in tax law. Never quite had a vision of how that would all come together, but it did. One morning, having my dream job as the acting solicitor of the NLRB, I got a call from the office of Senator Orrin Hatch. Never heard of these folks, never worked on Capitol Hill, but they had a vacancy as the chief counsel of the Senate Labor Committee for a year because they needed someone who was a labor lawyer but also could handle all things dealing with ERISA, which required some knowledge of finance and tax. So lo and behold, never quite a vision of how this would come together, but that morning it did. Scared to say yes, leaving my great career at the NLRB, a safe place. So it wasn't that I wanted to say yes, it was just that I knew that if I said no, I would question that decision for the rest of my life. And so it began a new career, the second of my life. Now I'm on number 3. Third, don't be afraid to fail. Your first deposition, argument, etc., will probably not be your best, but you will learn much in the process. We often learn more through failure than success, and every career, I can promise you, will have both. 4, never give up. Never. If you've gotten through law school, you already know what it means to persevere. There will be ups, there will be downs. Believe in yourself, be okay with depending on others, and stay the course. And there will be challenges, trust me. Self-doubt, guilt, choices. Hopefully many of you decide to have families. I can see from the audience today, many of you already have made that decision. And balancing the demands of your professional lives with your personal lives is not an easy task. Excuse me one second. I personally felt tricked as a working mother. Grew up thinking that the real challenge of child rearing subsided when your kids got to elementary school. Not so by a big stretch. Those structured routines before they got to elementary school with year-round daycare quickly fell apart, replaced by short school days and therefore after-school arrangements, summers off, endless teacher days and vacations through the school year, and yes, homework assignments, school projects, and weekends spent shuffling between endless softball and soccer matches. But then I was again fooled, thinking that by age 12 or 13, my kids could finally fend for themselves, giving me a bit of freedom. Wrong. What I quickly learned was that when kids are old enough not to need you around all of the time is when you really need to be around all of the time. So those of you that are working parents will surely experience the best of times and the worst of times. Sometimes it just comes down to having to make tough choices. And if you think that's somewhat unfair, too bad. Once you accept that there may be times in your long lives when you can't have it all, at least all at once, is when you really become an adult. You make choices that involve yourself and others, and you just do the best you can. And you don't wince over what you are missing. You rejoice at all that you have. 5, there is so much noise out there. Our political system seems broken at times. Our system of law gets tarnished on occasion. Some are concerned about a coarsening of the practice of law, afraid we see too many advocates attacking, accusing, playing games, and thinking that strident insults are part of a winning argument. And of course, the economic and security challenges we all face in this country are daunting. But as lawyers, do not forget, you are stewards of the law. And no matter how loud the noise, our profession is one of integrity. And this country's legal and judicial system is the greatest in the world. As Donald Varelli, who's currently the Solicitor General, has told new lawyers, quote, "You are joining a profession. If you are lucky, you will experience it as a calling." And he said at the core of the profession is an ethic of public responsibility, standing up for the rule of law in everything that you do. So graduates, hold your heads high and appreciate the private and public consequences of your actions. The system is imperfect, yes, but your role is not to complain, it is to work at improving it. A law degree is a powerful thing. You've learned how to think, how to be discerning, how to solve problems. With these tools, careers of all kind lay at your doorstep. Big firm life, small firm life, government work, nonprofits, the list goes on. In any one of these slots, you will have the opportunity to do great things, to improve the lives of others, to move and shape the rules governing our lives, to satisfy your own desire for stimulating work. Take the tools you've learned over the past years and do something of consequence with them. Finally, never stop learning. I say this with some experience, having had several careers and many, many jobs, and still planning perhaps for at least one more. Your graduation is the culmination of years of hard work, but it is not the end of your education. When you begin your legal careers and through the years you practice law, you will be exposed to new areas of the law and new problems. One of the great things about the legal profession, in my experience, is that it continually presents new challenges to learn. And particularly at this great intellectual property school, and I hope some of you will be joining me now in the profession of intellectual property, there could not be a more exciting practice of law. In law, we typically look back, as we should, to follow our precedents and what has been gone before us. But in intellectual property, so much of it is about looking forward and ensuring what we do fosters innovation for this country and our economy in the future. So graduates, an Italian poet whose name I can't pronounce and wouldn't even try in front of Judge Gallarza, once said that life is measured not in days, but in moments. This is your moment. Take it and run with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Prost, for those very wise and inspiring remarks. We turn now to the awarding of degrees. So I would ask Dean Canning to join me and my colleagues.
Will the Juris Doctor candidates please stand?
In recognition of the satisfactory fulfillment of the course of study and all the requirements pertaining thereto, the University of New Hampshire School of Law hereby awards the degree of Juris Doctor with all the rights and privileges, honors, and marks of distinction pertaining to those elevated to this degree. Congratulations.
You may be seated. Brett W. Allard. Keith Dennis Blair. Ivana Boychuk. Elena Mira Brander. Stephen J. Bryden. Silas K. Burdick. John S. Burlock. Zen John Cow. Laura N. Carlier. Hillary A. Cessna. Nicholas A. Chang-yen. Matthew G. Conley. Jeremy T. Conair. Miles Philip Davis. Maybe you want to walk to him. Maybe you want to go to him. You have to go back. You have to go this way. Watch the foot. Laura M. Del Camp. Michael R. DePietro. Clay R. Ensminger. Madison Elizabeth Fiedler. Allison M. Fusco. Mary Elizabeth Geiser. Emily C. Gehring. Chloe F. Golden. James Williams Hardy. Jessica M. Hyam. Asa J. Hunter. Lidea R. Irwin. Heather Johnston. Dana Whitley Jones. Ryan Kenny. Kristen M. Lang. Max D. Leibowitz. Lynn Lee. Yahan Liu. Jeffrey P. Manarini. James Albert McClure IV. Samuel A. McMahon. Nicholas Bignanelli. Stephanie Johanna Motes. Ashley E. Moore. Christina Ray Muniz. Prashant Muralidhar. Brendan A. O'Donnell. Michaela Marie Oliveira. Zisong Jack Pei.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Rebecca Maria Phillips. Wally U. Raja. Amanda E. Ramirez Kelmer. Jesse L. Renauld Smith. Joseph P. Reum. Rebecca D. Ricard. Erica Barbara Elizabeth Rogers. Heath M. Sargent. Andrew T. Schmid. Charles D. Shockley. Cassandra Joy Simmons. Jessica Shea Smith. Melissa A. St. Cyr. David M. Stamatis. Casey Marie Stanton. Abby Tucker. Penina Raquel Wallace. Alexander M. Walsh. Seth A. Walters. Erin Lorraine Walthai. Brendan B. Webb. Brendan Linscott Weil. Christina Marie Wilson. Keen Meng Wang. Abigail R. Zeller. Will the Joint Juris Doctor and Master of Laws in Intellectual Property candidates please stand?
In recognition of the satisfactory fulfillment of the course of study and all the requirements pertaining thereto, the University of New Hampshire School of Law hereby awards the degree of Juris Doctor and Master of Laws in Intellectual Property, with all the rights and privileges, honors, and marks of distinction pertaining to those elevated to this degree. Congratulations.
You may be seated. Will the Master of Laws in Commerce and Technology candidate please stand?
This one's all about you, Abraham. In recognition of the satisfactory fulfillment of the course of study and all the requirements pertaining thereto, the University of New Hampshire School of Law hereby awards the degree of Master of Laws in Commerce and Technology, with all the rights and privileges, honors, and marks of distinction pertaining to those elevated to this degree. Congratulations, Abraham.
Abraham Olamiju Toyo. Will the Master of Laws in Intellectual Property candidates please stand?
In recognition of the satisfactory fulfillment of the course of study and all the requirements pertaining thereto, the University of New Hampshire School of Law hereby awards the degree of Master of Laws in Intellectual Property, with all the rights and privileges, honors, and marks of distinction pertaining to those elevated to this degree. Congratulations.
Raymond Anthony Joa. Jerome Danny Munichen. Yuchen Wang. Will the Master of Intellectual Property candidates please stand?
In recognition of the satisfactory fulfillment of the course of study and all the requirements pertaining thereto, the University of New Hampshire School of Law hereby awards the degree of Master of Intellectual Property, with all the rights and privileges, honors, and marks of distinction pertaining to those elevated to this degree. Congratulations.
Sudesh Bala. Bohan Lee. Hao Lee. Yuchen Lin. Yajua Chien. Ping Ping Wang. Jingjing Xue.
I ask all the graduates to now stand for the conferring of degrees by the University of New Hampshire. President Huddleston.
Okay. That's very small.
That's brutal.
We didn't bring reading glasses, so this will be interesting. By the authority vested in me as president of the University of New Hampshire, and in recognition of the satisfactory fulfillment of the courses of study and all requirements pertaining to the degrees awarded, I now confer upon you all of the rights, privileges, honors, and marks of distinction pertaining to those elevated to these degrees. Congratulations.
You may be seated. So congratulations to all of you and welcome to the ranks of law graduates. As you leave us today and go forward with your lives, your interesting, diverse, successful professional lives that will take you in so many different directions, I'd like to just share with you one parting thought that relates to this enterprise that we're all engaged in as lawyers and members of the legal profession. You've learned many skills over the last 3 years. You've acquired an incredible amount of knowledge. And during that time, I think you have acquired perhaps the most important and defining attribute of our profession, which is the ability and the inclination to exercise reasoned judgment. It's the ability and the inclination to think in an informed and dispassionate and disciplined way about difficult questions. Professor Simon, when he spoke to you, talked about Professor Massey, Calvin Massey, who was really the embodiment of that principle. The ability to think long and hard about difficult issues over which we may disagree and do it in a careful, thoughtful, and respectful way. That is, that skill, that attribute is at times an unfortunately scarce commodity in our world. I think it is what most powerfully distinguishes you as law graduates now. It's your instinctive predisposition to understand an argument before rejecting it. There will always be disagreement in our society. It's the stuff of which the legal profession is made of: disagreement, argument, conflict. But that disagreement extends beyond the legal profession. It extends in every direction in a democratic society. There is disagreement in the courts, of course, but there's also disagreement in the legislatures. There's disagreement on the sidewalks. And the only question for us then is, how will we choose to disagree? Will we do so respectfully, by carefully considering the facts and the competing principles and interests at issue, or will we just raise our voices? By your very nature, now, as the professionals you've become, you will model the exercise of reason and judgment for a society that seems at times to have forgotten how to do so. You will do it in courtrooms. You will do it in boardrooms. You will do it in town meetings. You will do it in legislatures. You will be guardians, along with all the rest of your fellow members of the legal profession, of reason in an increasingly unreasonable world. And while that world may not always appreciate its great good fortune, it is very lucky to have you. So congratulations again on the tremendous achievement that today represents. Have a great afternoon. Please stay in touch. And everyone, please join us across the bridge at the tent for some light refreshments. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.